Chloe didn't scream or throw plates. Her brand of control was far more insidious. It was a whisper of code / a flicker of a GPS dot on a screen a quiet poison that seeped into the cracks of my life until I felt like I was living in a glass box. She was a software engineer with a genius-level IQ and the angelic face of a Botticelli painting. She framed her surveillance as love, her stalking as concern, her violation of my privacy as an act of profound, selfless caring, and, for 2 years, I believed her. It started small, as these things always do. We were dating, and her attentiveness felt like a superpower. She'd text me, feeling overwhelmed. Deep breaths. On a day I was silently panicking about a work deadline I hadn't even mentioned to her. She'd have my favorite obscure brand of tea waiting for me when I got home, saying, "I just had a feeling you needed this today." I mistook her uncanny intuition for a deep, soulful connection. I didn't realize she wasn't reading my soul. She was reading my emails. Her methods were layered and complex. She had installed a keylogger on my laptop under the guise of upgrading my security software. My phone had spyware, a gift from her disguised as a battery optimization app, which gave her access to my texts, my calls, my location, even my microphone. My social media accounts, my bank accounts, my smart TV, she had backdoors into all of them. She knew who I talked to, what I bought, where I went, what I watched. My life was an open book, and she was the only one with a library card. When I finally gathered the courage to break up with her, citing a need for space and a feeling of suffocation I couldn't quite articulate, she was beautifully, tragically understanding. "I get it, Alex," she'd said, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I love you so much that sometimes it's a lot. I'll back off. I just want you to be happy. And I'll always be here if you need me. Always." But she didn't back off. The surveillance simply became /remote. Her presence was a ghost that haunted my digital life. She'd accidentally run into me at a cafe I'd just mentioned to a friend in a text message. "What a coincidence," she'd say, her smile bright and innocent. She'd send me a link to an article about a niche topic I had just been researching for work, with a note saying, "This made me think of you." The coincidences piled up, each one a tiny, unnerving prickle on my skin. I started to feel a constant, low-grade paranoia, a sense that I was always being watched. But how could I prove it? If I accused her, she'd look at me with those wide, wounded eyes, and I would be the monster. I would be the one who was crazy, paranoid, ungrateful for her lingering affection. She was gaslighting me on a scale so grand I couldn't see its edges. The moment of truth, the instant the entire terrifying architecture of her control was revealed, came on a Tuesday. My car wouldn't start. The battery was dead. I called a mobile mechanic, a gruff older man named Sal with grease-stained fingers. He popped the hood, tinkered for a few minutes, and then grunted. "Well, here's your problem," he said. He held up a small black plastic box with 2 wires coming out of it. "You got a parasitic drain." I stared at the box. I'd never seen it before. "What is that?" Sal squinted at it. "Looks like a GPS tracker. Hardwired to the battery so it never dies. Or, until it kills your battery." He looked at me, his expression flat. You didn't know this was here, did you? The world tilted. The air rushed out of my lungs. The hundreds of coincidences, the prickling paranoia, the feeling of being watched, it all coalesced into a single, horrifying point of clarity represented by that little black box. It wasn't in my head. It was real. It was wired to the heart of my car. It was a physical manifestation of her digital leash. I felt a wave of nausea so intense I had to grip the side of the car to stay upright. No, I whispered, my voice hoarse. No, I didn't know. Want me to take it out? Sal asked, oblivious to the existential crisis unfolding before him. A cold, sharp thought cut through my panic. If I took it out, she would know. She would get an alert. The dot that was Alex's car would vanish from her screen, and she would know I was onto her. I couldn't let that happen. Not yet. No, I said, my voice firmer now, fueled by a sudden icy surge of adrenaline. Leave it in, just jump the battery. He gave me a weird look but did as I asked. As I drove home, the little black box felt like a bomb strapped to my car. But it was also my advantage now. It was the one piece of her system that I knew about for certain. She thought I was still asleep, still the oblivious, slightly pathetic ex she could manipulate. She had no idea I had just woken up. That night I didn't sleep. I sat in my dark apartment and saw the invisible threads she had woven. All around me. My phone, my laptop, my smart speaker, they weren't my property. They were her eyes and ears. Every text, every search, every conversation, she had it all. The scope of the violation was so immense, so total, that my initial fear began to curdle into a cold, hard rage. This was not love. This was not concern. This was ownership, and I would not be owned. I realized a confrontation was pointless. She would deny it, twist it, and make me the villain. Calling the police felt equally futile. How could I prove a keylogger or a piece of spyware without her admitting to it? It would be a messy, drawn-out battle, and she would use it to draw even closer to me, painting herself as the victim of my paranoid delusions. There was only one way out. I had to play her game, but better. She tracked my every move, so I would cover my tracks. And then I would disappear. The next morning, the performance of my life began. I called her, my voice full of the usual, slightly lost tone I used with her. I told her about the car battery. I could almost hear her smug satisfaction through the phone. "Oh no, Alex. Are you okay? You see, this is why I worry about you," she said, her voice dripping with faux concern. I played my part, thanking her for caring so much. We made plans for her to come over for dinner that Friday. Keep your enemies close. She needed to believe that everything was normal, that I was still safely in her digital cage. My plan had to be meticulous, a counter-algorithm to her surveillance. My apartment was compromised. My devices were her spies. My money was a breadcrumb trail. I had to operate entirely in the analog world, a ghost in her machine. Step 1 was creating a sterile environment for planning. The next day, I forgot my phone at home, a move I knew she'd notice and probably find endearing. I walked 10 blocks to a public library in a neighborhood I never frequented. I used one of their public terminals, making sure no one was behind me. My fingers, clumsy at first, typed my first free thoughts in years. How to find spyware on an iPhone. How to find a keylogger on a MacBook. How to disappear in the 21st century. Untraceable communication. By burner phone with cash. I spent 2 hours absorbing information, my mind a sponge. I learned about Faraday bags that block all signals. I learned about factory resets. I learned about the perils of using credit cards and the beauty of cash. I learned that disappearing wasn't about running. It was about systematically severing every thread that connected my old life to my new one. Step 2 was building my escape kit, piece by piece. Over the next 2 weeks, I became a creature of cash. I started getting extra cash back with my grocery purchases, small amounts she wouldn't flag as unusual. $50 here, $40 there. I hid the money in an old shoebox in my closet. On my lunch breaks, I'd walk to different convenience stores miles apart to buy prepaid gift cards. Visa, MasterCard, untraceable funds. With that cash, I bought my tools. A cheap no-frills duffel bag from a discount store. A new set of clothes, completely different from my usual style, things I could wear without feeling like Alex. A bus map of the United States. And most importantly, a Faraday bag for my phone. The moment I got back to my car, I slipped my phone inside it. For the first time in years, I was certain she couldn't hear me or track me. The silence was intoxicating. Step 3 was creating the smokescreen. I knew she was watching my online activity, so I had to give her a show. At home, with my phone out of the Faraday bag and my laptop connected to the Wi-Fi, I began to build a false narrative. I spent hours researching jobs in Portland, Oregon. I looked at apartment listings in the Pearl District. I read blogs about the Portland food scene. I made my digital footprint scream. I am planning to move to the Pacific Northwest. I wanted her to feel smart, to think she had figured out my plan to get some space. I needed her looking north while I planned to run south. During this time, my interactions with her were a masterclass in deception. I saw her for our Friday dinner. I let her hold my hand and tell me how much she worried about me. I listened to her talk about her work, nodding and smiling, while inside I was a coiled spring of cold fury. She helpfully pointed out a security flaw on my laptop and offered to fix it. It was a test. She was checking to see if her keylogger was still active. Wow, you're a lifesaver, Chloe, I said, my voice dripping with gratitude. I don't know what I'd do without you. Her smile was my confirmation. The spy was still in place. My performance was working. The final piece of the plan was a lifeline. I couldn't disappear completely. I needed one person to know I was alive and safe, a single point of contact for a true emergency. I couldn't use my family. Chloe would go to them first. I thought back, years back, to my freshman year college roommate, a girl named Maya who had moved to Austin, Texas. We hadn't spoken in 5 years. Chloe wouldn't know her name. From the library, I found her on a professional networking site and used a secure, anonymous email service to send a message. Maya, it's Alex, your old roommate. This is going to sound crazy, but I'm in a bad situation and I need to disappear. I don't need help or money. I just need one person on Earth to know my new name and city, just in case. Can I trust you? The wait for her reply was agonizing. 2 days later, a message appeared. Alex, I always knew you were the interesting one. I'm here. What do you need? A wave of relief washed over me. I wasn't entirely alone. The day of the disappearance D-Day, as I called it in my head, was a Thursday. I had chosen it because Chloe had a weekly team-building event that lasted late into the evening. My window was small. I spent the day performing my normal routine. I went to work. I called her in the afternoon to wish her a good time at her event. Have fun tonight, I said. I'm just going to have a quiet night in, probably watch a movie and crash early. Okay, sweetie. Stay safe, she said, her voice like silk. Always, I lied. As soon as the sun went down, my operation began. The adrenaline was afire in my veins. First, the digital ghosts. I took my laptop and my phone. I performed a full factory reset on both, wiping them clean of everything. I left them sitting side by side on the kitchen table, a clean slate. A digital suicide. To her, it would look like I had a breakdown and scrubbed my life. Next, the tracker. I went to my car, carefully removed the small black box from the battery, and walked to the nearest city bus stop. When the northbound bus arrived, I waited until the last second, then tucked the tracker into the grimy space under a back seat. I watched the bus pull away, carrying my digital ghost towards the Canadian border. North, just like my fake search history. Let her chase. That dot, back in my apartment, I did a final sweep. I took the duffel bag, the cash, and the prepaid gift cards. I put on my new anonymous clothes. I left behind everything else, every photo, every book, every piece of furniture. The life of Alex was ending in this apartment. I was leaving the skin I had shed on the floor. I didn't take a taxi. I walked 1.5 miles to a different bus station from the one I normally used. I paid cash for a one-way ticket to a small, insignificant town 200 miles away, a place with no connection to me. I sat in the back of the bus, my hood up, my face turned to the window, and watched my city recede. From that small town, I used a gift card to buy another ticket, this time to a major hub in a different state. And from that hub, another ticket. I was daisy-chaining my path, creating a trail so convoluted and cold that by the time she figured it out, I would be long gone. My final destination was Austin, a city I had never searched for, never mentioned, never even thought about until I remembered Maya. The first few days in Austin were a blur of cheap motels and cash-only diners. I was a ghost. I bought a burner phone with cash, but I kept it turned off. I was terrified to connect to the world again. Maya, true to her word, was my silent partner. I emailed her my new name, Grace, and told her I had arrived safely. She emailed back a simple, "Glad you made it, Grace. Be well." Using the library again, I found a shared living situation, a room for rent in a house with 3 other women, paid for with cash. I started looking for under-the-table jobs, anything that wouldn't require a background check that could ping my old identity. I worked as a waitress, a dog walker, a house cleaner. I was living on scraps, but I had never felt richer. The true feeling of freedom didn't come from the new city or the new name. It came about a month after my escape. I was sitting on a park bench, watching the sunset, I finally took the burner phone out of my bag and turned it on. It booted up with a generic jingle. The screen was blank. There were no messages, no missed calls, no notifications, no alerts. No one in the world knew this number. No one was looking for me here. The silence was absolute. It was the most beautiful sound I had ever heard. It was the sound of a cage door swinging open, the sound of a leash being cut, the sound of a target stepping off the range. For 2 years, she had tracked my every move, collecting my life like data points. I had responded in the only language she understood. I had covered my tracks, deleted my history, and disappeared. I had become a ghost in her machine, and in doing so, I had finally found a way to become a person again. The silence I had craved became my new reality.
For 6 months I lived as Grace, a ghost in the sun-drenched city of
Austin. I was a waitress at a cash-only diner, a dog walker for wealthy families, a house cleaner who left no trace but the scent of lemon polish. I paid my rent for a small room in a shared house with cash every month. My burner phone had only one number in it, Maya's, my old college roommate, my silent emergency contact. I was a phantom. I was untraceable. And I was, by all measures, completely and utterly safe. But I learned that safety and freedom are not the same thing. The anonymity that had once been my shield began to feel like a shroud. The digital silence, once a beautiful sound, stretched into a profound and aching loneliness. I would watch my housemates talk about their jobs, their families, their weekend plans, and I would offer vague, non-committal answers about my own life. I couldn't form real friendships because friendships are built on shared stories, and my story was a carefully guarded secret. Every potential connection was a risk. Every question about my past was a threat. I had escaped Chloe's cage only to build a new, more subtle one for myself, a cage of fear where the bars were made of my own secrecy. The turning point came on a warm Tuesday evening. I was walking through a park after my shift at the diner, and I saw a group of people taking a pottery class at an outdoor community studio. Their hands were covered in clay, their faces smudged and smiling. They were laughing, creating, sharing a messy, tangible experience. I felt a pang of longing so sharp it almost buckled my knees. Before Chloe, I had been a writer. My life had been about observation, connection, and the beautiful mess of human stories. Now, I was an expert in avoiding all three. I was safe, but I was not living. In my quest to disappear from Chloe's map, I was slowly disappearing from my own. That night, I did something I hadn't done in nearly a year. I used the secure, anonymous email account from the library to contact Maya, but this time, the message was different. Maya, are you free for a coffee this week? In person. I need to talk to a friend. It was the first time I had admitted, even to myself, how lonely I was. Her reply was immediate. Tomorrow. 10 a.m. Mozart's. I'll be there. Walking into that coffee shop felt more nerve-wracking than buying a bus ticket out of my old life. This was a real-world connection, a tangible link to my past. I scanned the crowd, my old paranoia flaring up like a phantom pain. Then I saw her, waving from a table by the water. When I sat down, she just looked at me for a long moment. "So," she said, her voice gentle, "how is it being a ghost?" The question was so direct, so perceptive, that it broke through my carefully constructed walls. And I told her everything: the loneliness, the fear, the feeling of being hollowed out by my own secrecy. "I'm safe, Maya," I finished, my voice barely a whisper. "But I think I'm forgetting how to be a person." "Because Grace isn't a person," she said, her gaze unwavering. "She's a hiding place. And you can't live in a hiding place forever. The question is, what are you going to do about Alex? Don't you miss her?" Her question hung in the air between us. Don't you miss her? I did. I missed my own name. I missed my own history, even the parts Chloe had tried to weaponize. I missed the possibility of a future that wasn't defined by the limits of my anonymity. Leaving Mia that day, I felt a shift inside me. The goal was no longer just to stay hidden. The goal was to find a way to re-emerge. A few weeks later, a digital scare solidified my resolve. I had created a new sterile social media profile under a variant of my new name just to follow a few local bands and artists. No friends, no personal photos, no identifying information. One morning, I woke up to a friend request. The profile was a generic one, no picture, but the name was vaguely familiar. Out of curiosity, I clicked on it. The profile had only one other friend, a distant cousin of Chloe's. It was a link, a tiny, almost imperceptible digital thread connecting my new world to the old one. It was probably nothing. A random coincidence in a world of billions of connections. But the jolt of pure, cold fear I felt was undeniable. It proved that as long as I was hiding, I would always be looking over my shoulder. The fear would always be there, because I was still playing her game, just on a different level. Hiding was a defensive move, and I was tired of being on the defensive. I realized then that the only way to truly be free was to stop hiding, to reclaim my name and my life, and to dare her to do something about it. The ultimate way to cover my tracks was to make them my own again. My new plan was the reverse of my old one. It wasn't a plan for disappearing. It was a plan for reappearing. I started with knowledge. I spent hours at the library, this time researching cyberstalking laws, restraining orders, and digital security. I learned about documenting evidence, about legal recourse. I was arming myself not with secrecy, but with information. My fear began to recede, replaced by a cold, practical anger. I had rights. I had power. The first step was the hardest. I walked into a bank, my heart pounding, and opened an account with my real name. I, Alex Riley, was creating a new financial footprint. Next, I signed a lease on a small apartment of my own, a place where Grace had never lived. It was a terrifying, exhilarating act of permanence. I applied for a job in my actual field as a copywriter for a small tech firm in Austin. I had to explain the year-long gap in my resume, and I did so with a carefully edited version of the truth. I was dealing with a serious personal matter that required me to step away from my career, I said in the interview. But I've resolved it now, and I am more focused and dedicated than ever. They hired me. Each step was a reclamation: getting a new driver's license, registering to vote, signing up for a library card under my own name. Each piece of official documentation was a nail in the coffin of the ghost named Grace. I was becoming a person again, a person with a paper trail, a person who existed in the real world. On my first day at my new job, I bought myself a new phone, a real one. I stood in my new empty apartment and programmed Chloe's number into it, and then I blocked it. I blocked her on every social media platform I could think of. It was a preemptive strike, a digital boundary she would find if she ever came looking. Then I called Chloe, my best friend Chloe. I added her number and Maya's and my sister's. The silence of my phone was no longer empty. It was curated. It was filled with the people I chose. The final act of my transformation happened a few months later. I was settled. I was thriving at my new job. I felt normal. One Saturday, I drove to a viewpoint overlooking the hills of Austin. I took out the old burner phone, the one I had kept in a drawer like a relic of a past life. I looked at its blank screen, remembering the profound peace its silence had once given me. It had been the sound of escape. But I didn't need it anymore. The peace I felt now was louder. It was the sound of a real life, with all its messy, beautiful, and chosen connections. I took a deep breath and threw the burner phone as far as I could into the dense woods. I didn't watch where it landed. It didn't matter. I had disappeared once to survive. But now I understood. The true victory wasn't in vanishing without a trace. It was in living a life so full and so fearlessly my own that the shadows of the past couldn't hope to keep up. I had covered my tracks, not by erasing them, but by paving them over with a bright new future. And I was just getting started. 2 more years passed, not in a blur, but as a distinct and deliberate sequence of days that I owned completely. The city of Austin was no longer a hiding place. It was simply home. The ghost of Grace was gone, not because she was buried, but because she had been fully integrated into the woman I now was, Alex Riley, a senior copywriter, a homeowner, a woman with a past she did not speak of often, but no longer ran from. The silence I had once craved had been replaced by a life filled with the right kind of noise, the sound of dinner parties with Chloe and Maya, the easy back and forth of brainstorming sessions at work, and the quiet, comfortable presence of Ben sleeping beside me at night. My job at the small tech firm had blossomed into a career. I had found my niche. A place where my unique history gave me an almost preternatural insight. Our company specialized in productivity and communication software, and I became the go-to voice for user security and privacy. I could spot a potential vector for harassment or control in a new feature from a mile away. I would read a proposal for a new location-sharing feature, and my old scars would ache, not with fear, but with knowledge. I knew exactly how. A tool designed for convenience could be twisted into a tool for control. The default setting needs to be off, I argued in a major project meeting once. The user has to consciously opt in to share their location for a specific time-limited purpose, and the notifications have to be obnoxious. The person being tracked needs to know, without a doubt, that they are being tracked. We have to design for the most vulnerable user, not the most trusting one. My boss and the engineers listened. They saw my passion not as paranoia, but as a deep, unwavering advocacy for the user. My trauma, once a source of shame and terror, had been reforged into a professional asset. It was my superpower. My relationship with Ben was a quiet revelation. It was a long, slow lesson in learning to trust again. The work was not in learning to trust him. He was an open, honest book. The work was in learning to trust myself in a partnership again. One Saturday, we were assembling a complicated bookshelf in our living room. I was reading the instructions and he was handling the tools. "Okay," I said. "Step 4 says we need to attach the back panel before the side panels." "That doesn't seem right," he said, looking at the pieces. "Logically, the sides should go on first to support the back. The instructions must be wrong." A cold, familiar dread washed over me. It was the echo of Julian's rules, of Chloe's absolute certainty, of a man's logic overriding my own perception. My immediate, ingrained instinct was to concede. He's a man. He's better at this. The instructions are probably wrong. Don't argue. I felt my throat tighten. But then I looked at Ben. He wasn't stating a rule. He was offering an opinion. He was looking at me, waiting for my input, not my submission. I took a breath. "Maybe," I said, my voice steady. "But the instructions are usually written this way for a reason. Let's just try it the way it says. If it doesn't work, we can take it apart. It's just a bookshelf. We can't get it wrong." He smiled, a warm, easy smile. "You're right. Instructions it is. You're the boss." And he picked up the back panel. It was such a small moment, utterly insignificant. But to me, it was everything. It was a partnership of equals, a place where my voice mattered. It was the opposite of everything I had ever known before. We built the bookshelf. It was solid and straight and beautiful. I rarely thought of Chloe anymore. She was a character in a book I had read a long time ago. But one day, I received an email from Maya. The subject line was just, "Thought you might want to see this." It was a link to a major tech industry news site. The headline read, "Lead engineer Chloe Jensen fired from Kronos Corp amidst allegations of corporate espionage and harassment." The article detailed how she had allegedly used her high-level access to stalk a junior colleague who had spurned her advances and had also been caught trying to steal proprietary code. I read the article twice. I felt no joy, no triumphant sense of revenge. All I felt was a profound, weary sadness and a quiet, chilling validation. It was never about me. I was not the cause of her obsession. I was just a target of opportunity. Her need for control, her inability to respect boundaries, it was a fundamental part of her, a destructive pattern that she had carried with her into every aspect of her life. She had not changed, and she had inevitably destroyed herself. I closed the browser window. I did not forward the article. I did not call Maya to gossip. I simply deleted the email, stood up from my desk, and went to water the plants on my balcony. Her story was over, and it had absolutely nothing to do with mine anymore. A few months later, I was asked to speak at a Women in Tech conference. My company wanted me to present the new suite of privacy and security features I had helped design. I stood on a brightly lit stage, looking out at a sea of hundreds of faces. For a moment, the old fear flickered, the fear of being scene of being exposed. But it was gone in an instant, replaced by a calm sense of purpose. I was not a victim telling a war story. I was an expert sharing my knowledge. We often think of safety as building walls, I said, my voice clear and confident, echoing through the auditorium. But true digital safety isn't about hiding. It's about having control. It's about owning your own data, your own location, your own story. It's about technology that asks for permission instead of assuming it. It's about building tools that empower the user, that give them the clarity and the confidence to draw their own boundaries. I looked out at the crowd, at the young women looking up at me, and I felt the final piece of my journey click into place. I had run, I had hidden, I had disappeared. I had reappeared, I had rebuilt, I had reclaimed. But this, I realized, was the final step. Not just living my own safe life, but using what I had learned to help make the world a little safer for others. I was no longer a ghost in the machine. I was one of its architects now, helping to design a better, safer way forward. I had not just escaped the map. I was helping to draw a new one,